This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by
shiresociety.com. Only a few of you have ever heard of alojzije stepinac, whose name I am probably slightly mispronouncing.
Hrvatska ustaška mladež iz Zagreba, kao i iz brojnih mjesta Hrvatske pokrajine.
He was Archbishop of Zagreb before and during World War II. I'm not generally known for being pro-Catholic, but this is one Catholic who got a bad rap. I think of him as sort of the Oskar Schindler of Croatia. He was essentially high up in the pro-Nazi regime, at least in practice, but he quickly became disillusioned and began actively working to save lives from the regime. Anyway, one of his biographers says that one of Stepinac's primary flaws that led him to initially support the Nazis was this. In his heart, he thought that nothing outside Croatia was quite real. So he was slow to recognize the atrocities Croatian forces were committing outside the state's real borders. Here in New Hampshire, we have the opposite problem. If Stepinac used to over-focus on the area around Zagreb, New Hampshireites, Free Staters, and Americans in general tend to under-focus on what's right in front of them. Certainly we don't engage enough in our neighborhoods, hardly any American does. It can be sort of difficult to do. But what I'm really talking about is more of a news and social media focus. Jason Soren's original idea was that the Free State Project should sort of focus like a laser on New Hampshire.
Turn that camera off, dude.
What's that?
You filming?
Yeah.
Turn it off.
The idea of trying to free Mississippi wasn't really on the agenda. It's sort of going off mission.
Okay. Huh?
Turn it off.
I'm not shutting it off, officer.
Well, you going to jail.
Excuse me?
Here you see the guys from Motorhome Diaries getting arrested while they're doing activism outside New Hampshire. Even I find myself getting drawn into covering issues that aren't really New Hampshire related. Earlier this week I saw freekeen.com actually do a story that was about freedom in China. There was, as best I could tell, no New Hampshire connection at all. The fact is, even as we are continuing to concentrate in New Hampshire, our efforts are still about as focused as a light bulb when they really should be more like a laser, ideally. All of us seem to keep getting distracted by stuff that's happening outside the state. What can be done about this? I'm not sure, but I can tell you that if you're creating media and it's not focused on New Hampshire to some extent, I'm not listening. Alojzije Stepinac acted like his little state or country was the entire world. We New Hampshire Liberty folk are acting like the global American empire is still our nation, and that's diffusing our efforts. Probably the ideal approach is a mix of the two approaches. I like to try and think of New Hampshire as my nation, concentrate on covering New Hampshire-related news, oppose the cruel things some pro-government New Hampshireites are doing abroad, but recognize the reality of what happens outside and let myself get drawn into it from time to time. Anyhow, in a lot of ways, I think we've got it backwards. Ideally, we should be focusing more and more on New Hampshire with the idea of focusing on the world later. You see, once we've achieved freedom in New Hampshire, I think it will be possible to become a little bit expansionist in a voluntary way. We're going to have the ability to project peaceable power in a way that no one ever has before.
Awesome. I will not have laughter in the courtroom. There are many important cases on today.
And we currently have a little bit of that, but I think it's sort of inefficient effort. Here, going back to the Motorhome Diaries guys, again, if you look at this video, this was shot in Massachusetts. It's an example of how Free Staters and Free Keen were able to essentially project power into a Massachusetts courtroom where, you know, some pretty impressive victories were won on the right to record. this is just a snapshot of what we're likely going to be able to do, 15 or 20 years from now outside our borders. But for now, our resources are so limited that it would have been better if none of this had to happen at all, if the activism could have been kept inside New Hampshire, because no one ever got in trouble outside New Hampshire. Anyway, less light bulb, more laser. That's my desire, and the one I try to impose on myself as best I can. Our ability to spread freedom is going to hinge on our ability to establish it here first.
The old world is collapsing, and it's going to take its slave driver governments with it. But what will rise up in their place? In New Hampshire, the Shire Society has a plan, a thriving web forum, and a history of action.
It didn't take long to come up with a plan.
You can sign up right now at shiresociety.com.